Ever feel like you're falling behind on the latest tech, AI, and all the smart devices in your life? That used to be me until I started tuning into The Kim Komando Show. It's on over 400 top radio stations and packed with the latest in the tech, AI, security tips, and tricks. Here's a secret I learned. If an Amazon package has the letters LPN, the item was returned. It's not new. Join millions who rely on Kim Komando. That's The Kim Komando Show, Komando.
Welcome to Radical Personal Finance, a show dedicated to providing you with the knowledge, skills, insight, and encouragement you need to live a rich and meaningful life now while building a plan for financial freedom in 10 years or less. My name is Joshua Sheets. I'm your host, and today we continue with our series on financial goals that you should set. Financial goals that everyone should set. This is episode 3 in that series, and the basic idea behind the series is this. In life, most of us rise to the goals that other people give us. And yet, a lot of times, people give us small goals, and we hit them and we say, I could have hit such bigger goals if somebody had come along and given me a bigger goal, justified it to me, and motivated me to do it. And so what I'm trying to do in this podcast is lay out for you the big but achievable goals that would make everyone better off. I want this show to be applicable to a 16-year-old young person or to a 50-year-old person or to a 90-year-old person. The idea is to say, what are the goals that really everyone should set? Now, of course, most of these are targeted towards people who are just getting started in the beginning, but we'll get to some of the other ones for the 50 and the 90-year-old person later in the series. And my hope is that this will provide for you something useful to talk about, talk with your teenagers about, talk with young people, and give them just a roadmap of good, aggressive, and achievable goals that they should set for their financial life. The first goal was get a job. If you're broke or if you know someone who's broke, the first way to get out of being broke and to start to make good progress financially is to get a job. That was goal number 1. Goal number 2 was save half, spend half. And the basic idea is that if you will restrict your consumption, your spending to 50% of your income, then you will always have room in your budget. You will have money available for investing. You'll have money available for starting businesses. You'll have money available for going to school and getting certifications and degrees that will help you to make more money. You'll have money available in case something bad happens and you lose your job. By spending half of your income, you will always be well positioned for anything that life can throw at you. And even if it's not achievable for some people today because you have high structural expenses, the ambition should be to get to the point where you're spending half of your income. And if you're starting off, just restrict your expenses, stay a few years behind your peers, and you'll be decades ahead of them in the fullness of time. If you've already established a lifestyle and you need to get to this, then trim your expenses and focus on increasing your income without increasing your lifestyle so you can get to save half and spend half. Now, goal number 3 is very simple and very impactful. Give away 10% of your income. The goal is that you give away consistently, month in, month out, year in, year out, 10% of your income. Now, this one is widely known and widely understood because of various religious traditions related to tithing or charitable giving, almsgiving, things like that. We all know that we should be giving away some of our money. That's what all of our historical cultures teach us. But this is also something that very few practice. And yet I believe it's one of the most transformative practices that you can put into your life and one that will lead to the best long-term good. Why don't more people give away 10% of their income? Well, there are many reasons. First, a lot of times they've never been taught to. Generally speaking, unless there's been clear and persuasive teaching that has come to somebody to say, set aside a percentage of your income, most people tend to give money away on an ad hoc basis. Somebody passes the plate in church and you put a $20 bill in. You see a bum on the street, you hand them a $5 bill. Somebody's in need, you make a one-time payment out of your income to pay, your next door neighbor's mortgage when she's in need. These are the kinds of things that people do on an ad hoc basis. But in general, very rarely have they ever been taught to systematically set aside 10% of their income for the specific purposes of giving. And yet this is enormously transformative. And it's the most important that you do this when you are young and or when you don't quite yet have a lot of money. There are other reasons people don't do it other than they haven't been taught. A good reason that people don't do it is they don't feel like they have very much money available. Usually, most of us find it pretty easy to spend all of our income. We generally have unlimited wants, and unless our income is absurdly ample, it's pretty easy to find interesting and fun things to do to consume our income. And that's generally what happens. That's why we started with save half, spend half. Imagine the difference between somebody who's spending most or all of his income, or in many cases, more than his income, and all of a sudden we say, all right, you need to give 10% of your income. That's tough to do. It takes a little while to work up to that. He's not even saving 10% of his income. But if we can get the guy to spend half, then we've all of a sudden got lots of extra money available. And while technically he might get richer by putting aside 50% in savings instead of 40% of savings, it's not that hard to go ahead then, if expenses have been restricted, and give aside 10% of his income. Another reason people don't do it is they just feel like the numbers are too small to be meaningful. And yet this is, as I see it, the exact time to start, is when you're not earning very much, because you need to build the habits, the muscles, and the skills necessary for you to successfully and effectively give away money. A lot of people say, well, someday in the future, I'll get rich and then I'll give money away. And some people probably do that. But I have a hard time believing that I would have the character to be able to do that. If I am not willing to give $10 out of $100, would I really just magically wake up someday and give $10 million out of $100 million? Maybe, but it seems hard for me to believe. It seems easier for me to think that even though the numbers may be more generous in the future, that I'll be struck with the same fears as I have today. The fears of inadequacy, not enough money, the fears of loss, and more importantly, I won't know how to do that. One of the things that I've observed doing financial planning for fairly wealthy people is that most people have the ambition to give away money effectively, to engage in some form of philanthropic giving, charitable giving, investment into causes and issues that they care about. Challenge is that when the numbers get big, this is really hard. I want you to imagine today that I write you a check for $100 million. And I say to you, it is your job to give away this $100 million in the next 5 years, so that 5 years from now, all of it is gone. And you have to do it without causing harm to anybody, and you have to do it in a way that's going to make a significant return on investment for these charitable and philanthropic dollars invested. You see how overwhelming that would be? Where would you even begin? I don't know how to do it. I've never given away $100 million. I couldn't tell you today how to do it. And so what you observe is frequently, if people haven't built the skills, even when they're good-minded about it, they just say here, and they shove it all into someone else's pocket to give it away and do the hard work. Right? You're Warren Buffett and you want to give away a lot of your estate to charity, so you turn around and give it to Bill Gates and say, here, you've got the foundation, you do it. That may be a decent strategic move. At the end of the day, it's not taking ownership of your responsibility as a steward of significant wealth. If you start, however, by giving $10 out of your first $100, you'll learn something about giving. You'll learn something about investing into other people, into needs that you see around you, into institutions that you care about, into causes that are important to you. Then, when you're giving 1,000 out of 10,000, you'll recognize that I can make a bigger difference, so let me be more careful about this. Then, when you're giving 100,000 out of 1,000,000, you start to become a really big fish, and you really want to return on your giving dollars. And then when you're giving away millions, you've built a strategy and a vision as to what you're actually trying to do with the money, and you're prepared for it. Giving is enormously powerful. At its core, by always giving 10% of your income, you are forced continually to defer gratification and to build your character muscles. Over the years in the Christian tradition of tithing, of giving 10% of your income to your local church, there has been a variety of studies that people have done on it. And there's abundant evidence that tithing, consistently giving 10% of income, is something that seems to be highly correlated with those who make a lot of money. The question is, why? Do people just make a lot of money and then give it? I don't think that's the answer. I think that the practice of tithing, consistently always taking money off the top and giving it away, has a transformative effect on people. It forces people to learn the lesson of delaying gratification, to recognize that I don't have to consume everything that's there. And this is one of those powerful character muscles which, when it's developed, has enormous impact across every aspect of life. If you can exercise control over your money, and you can give away 10% off the top before you spend, you'll probably have developed the skills of delaying gratification, and you'll have a better chance of exercising control over your sexual desire. If you can control your money, there's a good chance that you'll be a better worker because you have more patience with other aspects of life. You build a long-time perspective, and the ability of someone to see to the future and delay gratification with a long-time perspective is one of the most reliable indicators of long-term wealth potential. So the practice and act of automatically tithing your income and taking a tenth, that's what a tithe means, it's just a tenth of your income off the top, and giving it away, builds your character in a way that is truly impactful to your life. Giving is enormously powerful because it helps you to experience what it's like to be the person who makes a difference in another person's life. Years ago, I heard a lecturer who was talking about, what do you do if you just feel like you're at the end of your rope and you can't do it anymore? You're depressed, you're in a bad state. What do you do? Well, the best thing for you to do in that situation is to go find someone else who's in a worse situation and serve that person. So go find a local charitable relief effort for the poor and go and start helping other people. And that act of helping other people is going to improve your mental state and help you to be grateful for what you have. And it's going to fix your psychological problems quicker than many other things. Well, that's what giving is. When you're giving, you're continually thinking about other people, and you're continually thinking about where and how you can take money and make a difference for someone. And that allows you to start to experience what it's like to be a difference maker in the world, which is enormously powerful. Giving clues you in to those who are less fortunate than you. Instead of ignoring them and walking past them, you're instead walking around looking for them, saying, how can I give money to someone who needs it more than I do? And this is enormously powerful for your gratitude muscles. Causes you to see the world differently. Giving causes you to have a reason to work for the long term. If we look at the things that we can do with money, which can pretty well be divided into three categories. One is we can consume it, we can spend it. The second is we can invest it, or we can build with it. The third is we can give it. The first category, the one that we think will make us happiest, is actually a dead end. Consumption is a dead end because while going from total poverty and total lack to comfort has a big impact in our psychological health and happiness and experience of life, you quickly get to the point of diminishing returns. If you're living in your car because you're broke, or you're living on the street because you're broke, and you move up to a 300 square foot apartment, there will be because you can consume more and you can spend the money on the apartment, there will be a significant impact positively in the quality of your life. If you're living in a 300 square foot apartment, and you've got a family and children, and you move up to a 3,000 square foot house, there'll be another significant improvement in the quality of your life. But if you move from a 3,000 square foot house to a 30,000 square foot house, you won't experience anything like the same quality of life improvement that you did with the first few changes. If you don't have any money for food and you go from hungry all the time to having some cheap food that will fill your stomach and cause you to not be hungry, you'll experience a big quality of life improvement. If you go from having cheap food to having high quality food and enough of it, you'll experience another big jump in quality of life improvement. But if you go from having enough high quality food to eat that makes you feel good and meets all of your nutritional needs to becoming a glutton and consciously over-consuming at 2 or 3 or 10 times more than the amount of food that you need, or constantly living in just total luxury just because you can and always buying the most expensive food that you possibly could consume, you won't experience the same increase in lifestyle. It gets worse, though. With consumption, you're always exposed to the risk of hedonic adaptation. Whatever you do, the increase, you quickly get used to it. So at first, you don't travel because you don't have any money. Then you can afford to travel, so you buy bus tickets. And you love touring the world in buses because you can go and see the world. Then you move up from buses to airplanes, which cost a little bit more money. And now you're just grateful of how quickly I can travel the world in an airplane and how quickly I can make progress. Then you go from flying economy to flying business class or first class, and you're enormously grateful for the big increase in experience. Then you go from business class or first class to flying private, and now that's where it's at. Here's the challenge. Pretty soon, you get used to private. Or pretty soon, you get used to first class. And all of those same annoyances are still there, but now you're used to it. And you don't get the same pleasure out of it in the fullness of time. We could look at this with the new car effect. You go out and you're dreaming of a new car that you really like. And you go to the dealership and you buy a brand new car, and it's amazing. And for the first few weeks, every time you get in that car, you feel just a total shot of pleasure. And for a very few who have very carefully chosen a car that's exactly what they want, that pleasure will continue for months and maybe years every time they drive the car. But it's nowhere near as intense as it was the first time. And now you're just kind of used to it. And most cars, especially if they're more utilitarian versus something exotic that you carefully chose, most cars after a few months or a year, it just becomes another car. You get used to it. So with consumption, we're always prone to adapt to things. And we create a new set point, and now it just doesn't feel as exciting as it once was. And so many things are like this in life. The thing that you dream of getting, the thing you dream of doing, and then you achieve it. And then you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I always dreamed of having a job where I could travel a lot. I got to go be on an airplane again on Monday morning. I always dreamed of having a job where I could draw pictures for a living. I got to create another thing for a client. I always dreamed of a job where I could create another podcast for people and just do what I love to do. I got to go and make another podcast. Happens to all of us. We adapt. So consumption and self-indulgence has its place, but doesn't grow infinitely. Now, what about investment? Well, investment can grow based upon the thrill of investment can grow based upon the kind of investment. If you're doing passive investing, as in accumulating stocks and mutual funds and things like that, there's pleasure in watching your net worth go up, but there's not so much more pleasure when you get to X figures instead of X minus 1, right? You're dreaming of when you have a 6-figure net worth, and then you reach it. Okay, great. Then you're dreaming of 7 figures. Wow, I'm really going to make it. I made it. Then you're dreaming of 8 figures. I'm really going to make it. And the problem is, if you're just measuring the money, there's always somebody who has more money than you do. There's always somebody who is way richer than you and who can buy and sell you in a morning and not even notice it. So if you're looking for kind of satisfaction purely from the numbers, you're never really going to get it. Where there is a long runway with investment is if you're investing in business to do something. This is closely related to giving. If you look at someone who has a passion for a particular business or cause, I love to watch Elon Musk with his dedication to making man multiplanetary. And okay, it's all about we're going to Mars, we're going to Mars, we're going to Mars. And every time he has a company success. He's sold the company, takes all the money, plows it into the next big initiative, grows that one, makes a bunch of money, turns around, plows it all into the next big initiative. Well, he's had this long goal and he needed billions and billions of dollars to do it. And he's probably going to do it because he has a huge goal. And it's such a huge goal that the thrill of making business bigger and bigger and bigger doesn't have the same diminishing returns because it's not about the consumption, it's about the impact. Well, you can achieve the same thing when it comes to giving money. When you start to realize how much power you have when you can give money away, and you recognize that the more I give, the bigger of a difference I can make, it's enormously motivating. It's thrilling because now you've got to focus. And you say, I was excited when the first time I gave $1,000 away, but now I'm going to give $100,000. And if I do $1 million, I can support X number of people and I can make this change in the world. And we could build this thing bigger. And you have that thrill of constantly growing. And so those are the two forms of financial growth that have no limit to it. And the more people that you can help, well, probably you get numb to the numbers, the bigger the impact of it because you feel confident and you feel like what I'm doing matters. And it's rewarding in a way that consumption is not. So building, giving, impacting, these are things that can grow significantly. And giving, because you're experiencing it when you start, gives you something to grow into. You may have a real passion for supporting foreign mission work all around the world. And today you can support a missionary, and that wipes out your budget to be a small contributor to one missionary. But then 5 years from now, you could be supporting 5 or 10 missionaries. And in the fullness of time, you could be supporting 100 missionaries. Then you can establish a foundation that's going to ultimately impact thousands of missionaries, and you can see this grow. And there's a long-term growth factor that in some cases can be exponential, but it can give you motivation to do everything else, to keep working, to make more, to reduce your income so you have more money. Some of the people I think who I have met in my life who are the happiest are those who established a lifestyle that was appropriate for them, increased their income enormously, and just always increased their giving. They went from spending 90% and giving 10% to, in the middle and end of their life, spending 10% and giving 90%. I left out the accumulation. I'm going to continue to give accumulation targets here. But the point is that giving is that thing that ultimately can consume all of your income. It can consume all of your wealth, and you can be thoroughly satisfied with it. But giving is best started when you're young and when you're just getting started. So I'd like to give you now some practical tips on giving money away, some things that I think will be useful to you. First and foremost, I would encourage you in the same way when I said save half, spend half, split your income out before it ever comes into your hands. If you get paid with a check, because it's 1980, if you get paid with a check, you take your check to the bank, cash the check, there's $1,000 in the check. Take $500, put it in one pocket for spending. Take the other $500, put $100 into a pocket for giving and put $400 in for investing. Split it up front. Now, if it's 2024 and you're getting paid, then set it up with your human resource director that right off the top, your money gets split. If you can, split your money into 3 accounts. Account number 1 is for spending. That's where 50% of your paycheck goes. Account number 2 is for investing. That's where 40% of your paycheck goes. Account number 3 is for giving. That's where 10% of your paycheck goes. If you can't do that with your human resources coordinator or with your job, do it yourself. When you deposit a check or you get an amount of pay, just take 10% and put it in a separate account and build your giving account. Consistently, systematically, put the money into your giving account and start to accumulate giving money. Having a giving account will cause you to see the world differently because instead of just seeing a need and then wondering how much you can give, you're looking at the world differently because you have an amount to give and you're going around looking for needs. You're looking for things that you can do that will make a difference. This causes you to be a more ready and willing giver. You hear an appeal or you notice a need and you instantly know, I've got money for that, I can give it because I've already determined that this is money for giving. So you just Pop open your phone, see how much is in the giving account, and give that much. Boom, done. It's profoundly powerful. Whenever possible, you should give at the level where you can make an impact with the amount of money that you have to give. If your giving account has $100 in it, and you are getting a solicitation from the American Cancer Society, I beg of you not to give the American Cancer Society $100. They don't need it. There's no point. But if you take that $100 and you start giving it to homeless people that are on your street living in your town, and you go and you talk to them and you buy them a good meal and give them some cash so that they have some money in their pocket, and you encourage them and find out what their needs are and maybe get involved with them, you're going to be giving at a level that's enormously impactful. Your giving doesn't always have to be to those who are needy. You may just go out in the world and start giving to spread good cheer. Leave an extravagant tip for somebody. Bring coffee for all of your coworkers. Look for ways to just give things away to people. Pay for the person's meal on the other side of the restaurant or behind you in line. Just look for ways to give money away, but do it at a level that is appropriate for the amount of money that you're giving. When you get to the point where you're giving thousands of dollars and tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars, I ask you again, keep that same thing in mind. If you're going to give thousands of dollars, again, don't give it to the American Cancer Society. Find an organization that you think is worthy, where your thousands of dollars will be important. It's probably going to be a small organization, but that small organization may have an idea that really needs to be funded. When you get to the point where you're dealing with large amounts of money, then that's the time to consider large organizations. And the idea is, when you're giving, you have a responsibility in giving, and you need to demand a certain measure of accountability. Giving extravagantly just for the sheer joy of giving doesn't mean that you have to demand accountability. If you want to go and leave somebody an extravagant tip just because you really enjoyed an interaction, or you see that the person who is working in a restaurant or wherever you happen to be could really use it, just do it. You don't need to be accountable for the results. And I think that we should continually do that. You can be an encouragement to somebody in the moment where it's most needed just for giving it. But when you start giving consistently, routinely, or sizably, then you have a responsibility to be certain that the money is doing good and that the money is not being wasted, that the money is actually going to do the thing that is needed to be done. And so that's one big reason why you should always seek to give at the level where you're actually going to be impactful. The person who's giving millions and millions of dollars may be in the position to demand accountability from an enormous organization. And that's what he should do. But you should be looking for the same thing. When you are giving, be open to giving to individuals and be open to giving to institutions. There are many worthy institutions that need and deserve your support. The most obvious institution would be your local church. If you are consistently giving 10% of your income to your local church, and all of your fellow congregants are also consistently giving 10% to the local church, your local church will become an important beachhead in the community. It will do important things. And by working together with people in that congregation, you will be able to be extremely effective because the organization is well supported. Institutions are enormously important and enormously powerful. And you can often get a much bigger return on your investment by giving to institutions and just supporting them as a matter of standard practice. Because an institution has a clear vision, has a team to carry it out, has a history, has inside knowledge of exactly what it's trying to accomplish. So you should give systematically to institutions. You should also give to individuals. Individuals often can have their lives changed by another individual who happens on the scene at the right moment, who's able to help at the right time. So be open to both of those. Look for individuals who are in need and see how you can help them. Look for institutions that are doing effective work and see how you can support them. When you are giving, your giving should entail some ad hoc giving, meaning a spontaneous one-time contribution, and some of your giving should be involved with a continual, ongoing support of an individual or an institution. Both of these are important. It's important that not everything is already pre-engaged in ongoing support, because then when you come across a worthy opportunity, you won't have any money available for it. On the other hand, if you're just going through life just responding to ad hoc requests for money, then you're not actually building towards anything, and you're not actually being intentional about what you're giving. By committing to specific people or specific organizations on an ongoing basis, you're going to start moving yourself in the direction of actually establishing a strategy for your money. What types of organizations do I want to support? What causes are important to me? And you have to go and look for worthy organizations. And in addition, you're giving to organizations, or you're giving to ongoing commitments, will start to provide opportunity for you to be engaged in something beyond giving, to be engaged in a volunteer effort, to be engaged as part of the team, to be engaged in providing wisdom, counsel, prayer, support, ideas, whatever it is. And that will be an important component to your giving. As you're giving, remember that giving money is wonderful and important and is the primary focus here in this podcast. Giving time, energy, knowledge, experience, wisdom, all of these things are also important. Ideally, you would have the opportunity to contribute more than just money. And these things will often go together. If you're going to get the real story, you can't just be of how effective an organization is at tackling a certain cause. You can't just expect to get that as an anonymous donor. You may sit down and write out anonymous checks at the end of the year to support your list of organizations, but all you're going to get is a thank you letter and a kind of a standard report. That standard report is probably going to be honest and truthful, but you're not really going to know what's happening with the organization. But if there's an organization that you're really engaged in and you get involved with it so that you're giving your time and your energy to it, in addition to your money, now you're going to get the real inside scoop. And so back to the concept of scale. Ideally, in a perfect world, most of your giving would be being done with people or organizations where you are also closely connected. Ideally, they're organizations where you're on the board, or you're an advisor, or you're very well connected, you're a key donor, something like that. And those organizations and the scale of these things will change throughout your lifetime. It's different when you're getting started, and it's different from when you're wealthy. But the idea is you want to be able to use not only money, but other things that you have. This also helps for you to maximize your actual contribution. It's one thing for you to anonymously give money on an ad hoc basis to an organization that you think deserves a donation this month. That's great. It's far more effective for you to give money on a continual basis to an organization that has a mission that you really care about and that you're really engaged with. And you're also on the board of directors for that. And you're also fundraising. And now you're out recruiting for all of your friends and all of your acquaintances to also give to this worthy effort. So now the money that you're contributing is being multiplied perhaps 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 times because you're really engaged in it. This is the pathway that I want you to be on, especially as you arrive to the middle part of your life, where most of the consumption needs of your life are stabilized. You've perhaps purchased your home, you've established your lifestyle, you've bought the things that you needed to do, you've saved money for your own financial security, your children are raised or on track to being raised, so therefore you have more wiggle room. I want you to be in the point where you're really engaged with some organizations and some people that you really care about. And so that you are supporting them financially. That's generally always the first thing, but also with your time and energy. And then you're multiplying that by engaging with others. And this is why it's so important to build the skills and the knowledge over time that comes from starting small with your giving. If you can't give money to an organization that you care about, give time, give energy. And look forward to the day when you can give money and use that as a motivation to keep you working hard so that you can give money. I want you to always begin with the end in mind. Look around at wealthy people, read profiles of wealthy people, talk to wealthy people. And what you will generally find is that when someone has passed into that space of financial abundance, he or she has more money than he's ever going to need. He or she has more money than she actually can consume, even with a profligate lifestyle, with a very high consumption lifestyle. This person is generally looking for something to do to make a difference. When he or she is consistently, over the course of years and decades, engaged in constant, never-ending giving, normally this transition is pretty easy to make. Guy says, I know exactly the organizations. These are the ones I'm involved in. These are the causes I'm working on. And now I'm going to continue to focus. And now I can just give a lot more money, a lot more time to it because I retired and I've got all this extra money. Now I can really be engaged with it. But if a guy doesn't have that history, it's very hard to make that transition because the jump is just too much. It'd be like going from 0 children to 7 children. It's not particularly difficult to go from 6 children to 7 children or 5 children to 7 children. You might even be able to go from 4 children to 7 children comfortably. But you don't go from having a quiet household with 2 adults to all of a sudden having 7 children underfoot. That doesn't generally go smoothly. You have to grow into it. And it's the same with basically everything else in life, including giving. So in conclusion, one of the most powerful things that you can do is consistently give away from the very beginning 10% of your income. You do that by having an income. Goal 1, get a job. You do that by setting your expenses conservatively as compared to your expenses. Spend half, save half. And you do that by off the top, separating your giving money, setting it aside so that it can be invested into the causes that you think are most worthwhile. This 10% of your income, in the fullness of time, will be your favorite 10%, the 10% that brings you the most joy. And it'll be the joy that has almost infinite scalability. It'll be the joy that is the least exposed to diminishing returns. On the contrary, it'll give you increasing returns, which is truly what you're looking for. Some categories in our budget should start small and stay small. Some categories, we want to fix them and we want to decrease them. Some categories, we want to start them and we want to increase them. And giving is that category. We want to start it at 10%. And then in the fullness of time, we want to increase it and increase it and increase it and increase it and increase it. That's a recipe for an impactful and fulfilling life. That's a good use of money. That's why the goal of giving away your 10% of your income should be a goal that each and every man and woman, each and every young person, each and every boy and girl installs from the very first paycheck forward.